Daniel Hawthorne built a private palace with the intention of keeping the world away from himself, but in the end, he locked his own heart inside it as well. After the loss that had changed everything, this extremely wealthy executive moved through the vast residence like an empty presence. Because since the day his wife passed away, his entire house had fallen into darkness. Expensive works of art were displayed on the walls. A musical instrument lay silent, and its silence felt louder than sound. What had once been filled with warmth had now become a preserved shell of memories, and Daniel knew all of this, but he did not know the way out of that confinement. Upstairs, his preschool-aged young brothers, Owen and Lucas, learned how to disappear without leaving the room. They stopped asking for evening routines. Children's artwork no longer reached the kitchen display. They no longer waited by the long entrance for footsteps that rarely came. Silence became their shared language, and they spoke it well. Temporary caretakers rotated through the house. Each arrived cautiously optimistic. By early week they tried. By late week they were drained. A short span later they were gone. People whispered that the boys were difficult, unmanageable, cold. The truth was heavier. They weren't acting out. They were deeply wounded, and no one had stayed long enough to see it. Daniel told himself he was doing what a grieving parent should. He focused on business holdings. He signed corporate obligations. He gave larger donations. He convinced himself protection meant distance. But vast resources couldn't reach what was unraveling behind closed doors. It didn't notice when Owen lined up small toys with strict care, jaw tight, hands shaking if one moved. It didn't hear Lucas stand by the window, staring down the long entrance, listening to nothing and calling it normal. Household employees exchanged quiet looks, knowing they could polish every surface and still not reach the damage underneath. Each late evening, Daniel passed the children's door. He offered a tired glance and the same promise, another day soon. The words never carried weight. The house stayed still, holding its breath, waiting for something gentle enough to break through and strong enough not to leave. That change began the day Eliza Moore crossed the security entrance of the Hawthorne property. The shift was subtle, but everyone inside felt it. She arrived without display, carrying one small suitcase and the calm presence of someone who had endured hardship without becoming hard. She walked through the large residence without awe. Chandeliers didn't slow her steps. Art didn't pull her gaze. Instead, she followed the quiet until she found two small figures sitting against the wall of the children's room, knees drawn close, eyes distant. Eliza didn't rush them. She didn't introduce herself with rules or expectations. She lowered herself onto the floor in the corridor just outside the room, opened an illustrated children's book, and let the sound of turning pages travel down the hall like an invitation. The boys ignored her at first. They were used to adults who demanded responses. Eliza waited anyway. Minutes passed. The corridor clock ticked. Owen shifted closer without realizing it. Lucas leaned forward, eyes tracing the pictures. Eliza smiled without looking at them and kept reading, steady and unafraid of quiet. Later that night, Daniel barely registered her presence. He was buried in work papers, certain she would disappear like the rest. But something had already taken root. Eliza never treated the boys as tasks. She saw them as people who needed time, and she gave it without condition. The large residence remained cold, but her calm began filling small spaces. Household employees whispered that the live-in caregiver might last. For the first time in years, someone stayed inside the silence instead of fleeing from it, and the house noticed. The first real shift came during an overcast afternoon. Clouds pressed low over the outdoor grounds, rain tapping windows with steady force. Eliza sat at a low table in the main sitting area, working quietly through a table game. She didn't invite. She didn't encourage. She simply worked, humming a soft tune, letting the moment breathe. Owen and Lucas watched from behind a wall of blocks, curiosity pushing against fear. Lucas moved first, eyes fixed on the pieces. Owen followed, gripping a small toy so tightly his knuckles went pale. Without a word, Lucas placed a piece into the correct spot. Eliza didn't praise him loudly. She nodded once and whispered, "That's it." The simple response landed deeper than excitement ever could. Respect replaced pressure and something loosened. As time slowly passed, moments stacked quietly. Owen lifted his eyes during quiet storytelling, not always listening to the words but anchoring himself to Eliza's voice. Lucas followed her into the family kitchen, sitting close while she prepared meals, never speaking but always staying. She saw their need for daily structure and gave it without announcement. Same smile each morning, same patience each evening. When juice spilled onto the floor, she didn't react with frustration. She knelt beside them in the corridor, handed them a towel and said, "We clean it together." The boys froze, bracing for anger that never came. The tension broke. Laughter slipped out before they could stop it. A sponge slid across the floor. Owen chased it, laughing, unsure if the sound belonged to him. Household employees noticed. A quiet comment here, a smile there. The boys helped without resistance. They watched Eliza plant flowers on the outdoor grounds, peeking from behind hedges, learning how staying felt. Daniel remained unaware. From the home office, he occasionally saw movement below. He dismissed it as routine. Yet something about the caregiver's steadiness unsettled him, and he didn't know why. One night crossing the corridor, he paused. Through a cracked door, he saw Owen and Lucas sitting close beside Eliza, their shoulders touching, eyes locked on a page. Eliza traced a picture slowly. Lucas followed her finger, focused, present. A sound reached Daniel that stopped him cold. A laugh, small, real, unprotected. He stood frozen, breath caught, realizing something inside the house, and inside him, had shifted and there was no turning back. Daniel told himself it didn't matter. Another professional, another quiet attempt that would fade. Yet Eliza Moore unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. She never hesitated in the large residence, never flinched at rules he barely remembered making. She didn't challenge him. She simply arrived, again and again, steady as if patience were her language, and the walls around his children began to thin. One night, moving through the corridor toward a late call, Daniel slowed. He hadn't planned to stop. He never did. But a sound pulled him short. Through a narrow gap, he saw Owen and Lucas sitting close beside Eliza, shoulders touching, attention fixed. She held an illustrated children's book low, tracing a shape with her finger. Lucas followed the line carefully, pressing his fingertip to the page like a promise he didn't want to break. Then it happened. A giggle slipped out, small, unfiltered, real. Daniel froze mid-step, his chest locked. The sound hit him without warning, sharp and bright, cutting through years of controlled silence. He didn't enter the room. He didn't breathe. The moment passed quickly, but it left him standing there long after the noise faded, shaken by what it stirred. Later that night, lying awake in his room, the sound replayed again and again. Not laughter in general, their laughter. Fragile, alive, proof that something inside his children was waking and he had no idea how. The shift deepened during a quiet afternoon after the clouds finally cleared. Sunlight stretched across the outdoor grounds, reflecting off glass like thin silver lines. Inside the main sitting area, Eliza lowered herself carefully onto the sofa, one hand resting against her growing stomach. Owen and Lucas hovered nearby, restless, holding coloring pens, unsure what was allowed. "You can draw," she said gently, "only here just for fun." They hesitated. Silence pressed tight. Then Lucas stepped forward, green pen touching fabric. Owen followed, bold lines of red and blue spilling out. Their laughter bubbled up, uncertain at first, then louder, filling a space that once knew only restraint. They drew crooked shapes, wobbly creatures, a sun that barely held together. Eliza laughed with them, never correcting, never directing. Then Owen went still. His brow tightened. He switched to a dark pen and began shaping letters, uneven, reversed, determined. Lucas leaned in close, whispering sounds under his breath, guiding him like a mission that mattered. When they finished, they leaned back, proud and breathless. Across Eliza's stomach, surrounded by color, were two shaky words. "Our baby." The room stilled. Eliza's breath caught. Emotion rose fast and sharp, pressing behind her eyes. This wasn't play anymore. This was choice, belonging. The boys had claimed the child not because they were told to, but because their hearts decided first. Daniel stepped in without realizing it. He had meant to pass through, meant to offer a distracted nod. What he saw rooted him to the floor. His children knelt close, hands resting carefully against Eliza's stomach, faces lit with pride. Lucas looked up. "Come see," he said softly. Daniel's gaze dropped to the words. His knees weakened, the air left his chest. The wall he'd built since his late spouse's death cracked wide open. Work, distance, control, none of it protected him now. Tears came fast, uncontrolled. He tried to steady himself and failed. His shoulders shook as he dropped to one knee, grief and relief colliding at once. For the first time since the loss that changed everything, Daniel Hoth. Orrin broke completely. Owen noticed first. His eyes widened. "You're crying," he whispered, not afraid, just curious. The boys reached for Daniel's hands and pulled him closer. "Touch," Lucas urged. Daniel hesitated, breath trembling, then pressed his palm gently against Eliza's stomach. Movement answered him, a flutter, real, alive. He gasped, pulling back in shock. The boys burst into laughter. "He moved," Owen shouted, clapping. Daniel laughed through tears he couldn't stop. His mind raced with disbelief. Apologies he never said crowded his thoughts. "I should have been here. I didn't know. I didn't think I could come back." Eliza met his eyes. No judgment, just understanding. The truth lived in the room now, written in uneven letters, held together by small hands and fragile courage. Later that night, long after the boys slept, Daniel stood outside their door in the corridor. He had passed this spot countless times, always with the same promise, another day soon. Tonight, the sound of their steady breathing stopped him cold. He rested his hand against the frame. For the first time, he didn't want to walk away. The following day, instead of retreating to the home office, Daniel found himself in the family kitchen. Flour dusted the counters. A stack of pancakes leaned dangerously. Owen grinned. "I cracked an egg. The shell slipped." Daniel's first instinct was correction. Habit. Control. It faded when Eliza glanced at him, calm and open. He reached in, removed the shell, and said quietly, "Good try. We'll fix it together." Owen's smile hit harder than any success Daniel had chased. Small changes followed. Daniel sat on the floor during evening routines, stiff at first, unsure where to place himself. When Lucas leaned into his side, Daniel's breath caught. He stayed still, letting the weight settle, letting the moment happen. Later, Owen handed him a drawing, 4 figures, uneven but sure. Daniel swallowed hard. "Is this us?" Owen nodded. Daniel pinned it to the kitchen display, where absence once lived. Household employees noticed. Whispers spread. The parent who never stopped now stayed. And Daniel felt it too, the fear, the guilt, the love he had buried rising together, warning him that something bigger was coming and he would have to face it. One of the household employees paused when she saw Daniel kneeling in the corridor, tying Lucas's shoes instead of calling for help. She said nothing, but the look said enough. The large residence no longer felt weighed down by lingering sorrow. It carried motion now. Laughter, real and unrestrained, bounced through open spaces that had stayed quiet since the loss that changed everything, and that sound refused to fade. The biggest shift wasn't the noise. It was Daniel himself. Late evening used to send him back toward screens and silence, but now he stayed. When Eliza suggested the boys invent their own evening routines, Owen and Lucas turned to Daniel with open expectation. Fear tightened his chest. He almost declined. Instead, he started talking. His story made little sense, about a baby animal who couldn't make the right sound, told with pauses and wrong turns. The boys howled with laughter, fixing it for him, adding their own ideas, and Daniel laughed too, rough, surprised, and undone by it. That joy came with pain. Some nights guilt pressed so hard he struggled to breathe. Memories rushed in, doors he never opened, questions he ignored, moments he missed. His instinct was retreat. He fought it. When the boys argued, he stumbled through calm guidance. When they asked questions he couldn't answer, he admitted it. The image of a perfect single parent shattered, replaced by something real, and it terrified him. Eliza stayed close, never stepping ahead, never claiming credit. Her quiet belief had sparked the change, but Daniel fed it now. One night after tucking the boys into bed, Owen whispered, "Will you be here again?" The question landed like a blade. Daniel leaned down, breath shaking, and said, "I'm not going anywhere." The words locked him in place, and he knew there was no return. The following day, sunlight filtered through the blinds as Daniel noticed how slow Eliza moved. Physical strain showed in her posture. "You're not going alone," he said. She tried to object. He didn't allow it. "We're all going." Owen and Lucas froze, then burst into excitement. They had never joined her for a medical appointment. The idea felt huge. In the transport assistance vehicle, questions flew from the back seat. "Does he like loud sounds? Can he hear us?" Daniel answered where he could, surprised by how natural it felt to try. He didn't realize his hands were shaking until the vehicle slowed near the medical center, and fear crept back in. The medical facility smelled clean and unfamiliar. Machines hummed. Eliza rested on the examination bed while a medical staff member prepared the monitoring device. Owen and Lucas clutched Daniel's hands, eyes wide. Then the room fell quiet. A rhythmic sound filled the air, fast, steady, undeniable. The boys froze, their fingers tightened. Time stretched thin. Lucas whispered first, voice barely there. "Is that ours?" Owen nodded without looking away. Together they asked, "Is he our baby?" The question shattered Daniel. His knees buckled. He dropped to the floor, breath leaving him in a sharp rush. Tears hit before he could stop them. He held their hands, shaking, apology and disbelief colliding in his chest. "I didn't know. I wasn't ready. I'm here now." The words stayed inside, heavy and urgent. "Yes," Daniel said, voice breaking. "He is." Eliza watched, eyes full, saying nothing. The boys leaned closer to her growing stomach, whispering promises. The medical staff member glanced away, giving the moment space. Daniel stayed on the floor, undone, realizing love had grown without permission, stronger than fear. In the corridor afterward, Owen and Lucas skipped ahead, holding the medical image like treasure. Daniel walked slower, one hand steady on Eliza's shoulder. In the outdoor facility area, he met her eyes and nodded once. No words followed. None were needed. He finally understood what she had shown them all along, and the weight of that realization pressed forward. Some time later, the Hawthorne property changed again. The silence vanished completely, replaced by fast steps and endless questions. Eliza's new arrival was healthy. When she placed the baby into Daniel's arms, his breath stopped. The world narrowed to that small weight. Owen and Lucas hovered, chests lifted with pride. They whispered, "Our baby," touching his hand with care that bordered on sacred. The large residence filled quickly, children's artwork taped to walls, small toys racing across floors, voices rising and falling without fear. Late at night, Daniel woke not from lingering sorrow but from instinct, checking the infant bed, then standing in the doorway of the next room, listening to his older sons breathe. The walls he built fell away. Messy mornings didn't bother him. Evening routines became anchors. He sat through chaos and stayed. Love didn't wait for control. It grew in spilled drinks, broken sentences, and tired arms that refused to let go. Daniel Hawthorne had once believed safety came from distance. Now he understood it came from presence. The house no longer felt like a structure he owned. It felt like a place he belonged, and that truth carried its own weight forward.